All right. We have everybody ready to go. I will, in the interest of both time and warmth, we'll get this show on the road. I want to thank all of you for being here today. We're here to talk about certainly an issue that I think has certainly dominated state of New York, state government, the country, but particularly the last several months here in New York, which is the continued approach that our state, including Governor Hochul, the continued approach to managing, governing during this pandemic that our conference and many New Yorkers not only feel is wrong, but the data does not back up the policies. And I want to be clear, today we are not in the same space today that we were in the spring of 2020. In other words, we know more today. We know more about COVID. We're now into the third, if you would, iteration, the third strain. We have vaccines. The public is educated. And I would challenge anyone, if you look at the policies that New York State under Cuomo and Hochul have put forward, the mandates, the executive orders, I would dare anyone to show me a tangible metric difference between New York State and other states across the country. Deaths. We're doing as bad, if not worse, than most, if not all other states. Rates, hospitalizations, all those things. We have failed to, all the policies have failed to achieve at least the ends that we were told they would achieve. And it's gotten to the point where a lot of elected leaders no longer feel they even need to explain or justify these policies. That just doing them, it's anyone who challenges those, you must be a COVID denier. I want to be very clear. Our conference, Senator Ort, and the men and women behind me, no one is denying the reality and the significance of the pandemic we've lived through the last 2 years. There is a difference in disagreeing with policies and in looking at data and being practical about is this working. That is a different and should be welcomed as opposed to denying the existence of something. Our colleagues, many of them will force that false narrative. They will say, if you don't think mandates are right, well, that's because you're for recklessness, lawlessness, you're a COVID denier. Nothing could be further from the truth. Nothing could be further from the truth. And when you look at the policies, not only have they not stopped New York from the deaths we've had, the cases we've had, but I would argue they've actually exacerbated other problems that we now have that other states don't. Unemployment. Once upon this time, we lionized our healthcare workers. Lionized. We told everyone they were heroes, and we were right. But in a short span, some of those same workers, they have lost their jobs because they didn't get a vaccine or a booster. And let's be clear on that too. We told people, get a vaccine, get a booster. If you're in healthcare, you have to get it, or you'll be out of a job, or you won't be able to feed your family. We know for a fact, undeniably, that people who are vaccinated and boosted can still get COVID and still spread COVID. So why would we continue to force healthcare workers why would we not allow a test option? We have tests to stay in school. Why wouldn't we have a test to stay at your job? Especially when we need healthcare workers. If we're going to continue to battle the pandemic and the virus, we need people to do it. It isn't just going to happen. The National Guard isn't the final answer. Many of those National Guard members, by the way, guess what they do in their civilian jobs? They're nurses. They're in healthcare. So you're not actually adding anybody to the mix. You're just swapping uniforms. We have contributed to the healthcare worker shortage that was there before and is now worse because of the mandates, because of these policies. And I would argue it hasn't saved anybody. Those mandates haven't worked. And we could go through a list of data that would verify that. So what we're calling for is a transition from mandates to guidance. I, in this conference, trust New Yorkers, and I would argue that the governor and my colleagues across the aisle do not. If they did, they wouldn't have to rely on mandates. They would have you believe that absent the government, New Yorkers wouldn't know what to do. Absent the government, New Yorkers couldn't possibly be safe. Absent the mandates, it would be, we'd all, the death numbers would be at record highs. That's simply not true. New Yorkers know what to do. They know. They've been doing it themselves across various parts of the state for the entire pandemic. Business owners want to protect their customers. Nurses want to protect their patients. Parents want to protect their families. Teachers want to protect their students. It doesn't mean because it's coming from here. It's people. I trust New Yorkers at this point in the pandemic, 2 years in, to make the right decision. And we should continue to put out guidance, and New Yorkers will pay attention. We should continue to put out education and information, and New Yorkers will pay attention. But weaponizing the government to divide people in a way that has not helped stop the spread, but what it has done, we've got people advocating for permanent at-home schooling. Permanent. Nothing could be more harmful to the future of New York than forcing students to be permanently at home. Distance learning, from what I've seen, it just means kids are distanced from learning. And that is not an answer. We have demonized people, demonized communities around this notion, and the science simply doesn't back it up at this point. The data doesn't back it up. And whether it's education, childcare, healthcare, or just good old-fashioned common sense, we need to transition to a new phase in this pandemic. And I would remind everybody, we need to learn. We've been saying this for a long time. We need to learn to live. We're going to have to learn to live with COVID. I don't know that COVID is going anywhere tomorrow. I wish it would, but I don't know that it is. And living with COVID does not mean your child being at home for the rest of his education or her education. It does not mean forcing healthcare workers to get a vaccine that doesn't actually stop the spread or transmissibility of the virus. It may protect the nurse from ending up in the hospital, but it doesn't prevent her or him from transmitting the virus to a possible patient. So let's be smart. Let's look at the data. Let's move to guidance, focus on guidance. New Yorkers will listen. I trust New Yorkers. And it's time Governor Hochul and my colleagues across the aisle do the same. And at this time, I want to call up my colleague from Staten Island, someone who has been a strong voice against policies that haven't worked, whether it was Governor Cuomo, whether it was former Mayor Bill de Blasio, or Governor Hochul now, my colleague, our Deputy Leader, Senator Andrew Lanza.
Thank you, Senator Ortt. Once again, I just have to say how proud I am to be part of this Republican conference with Senator Ortt as our leader. He gets it. He always has. This conference gets it. He leads us in our fight for the people of the state of New York, regardless of the fact that we're standing opposed to the powers that be, that we're going against the status quo, in spite of the fact that it is sometimes and most often not politically correct. We don't care because we care about New Yorkers. You know, this pandemic has shown us a lot. It's exposed one of my favorite movies, Clint Eastwood, it's exposed the good, the bad, and the ugly, and too much of it has been bad. And one of the things that we've learned is that the bureaucracy that is in place to protect and to educate our students across the state of New York does not know what it's doing. It is clear that what has been exposed by this pandemic is the incompetence of the bureaucracies here in New York. If you want to understand the epic fail that New York's management of the COVID pandemic has been, look no further than what New York mandates have done to our students. You know, my father turned 87 years old yesterday. I had a long conversation with him. He lived through the aftermath of the Depression and World War II. And he was a child, a student in grammar school in New York City during World War II, and he said something very interesting to me. He said through all that, there were no disruptions. There didn't seem to be the same kind of chaos in the schools that he's watching and he's looking in terms of his grandchildren and in the news. And that is just a sad reflection in terms of what has happened here in New York. I can report to you, I witnessed firsthand what happened in New York City. The former Chancellor there, Carranza, who to me is best known for his discriminatory policies against Asian American students. You know, the left constantly talks about the next catastrophe coming around the corner. They will have you believe that next week and every week the world is going to end. So at least you would think they would be prepared for it. When he turned off our schools and sent our kids home, there was not a single plan in place. They didn't have a mask, they didn't have sanitizers, they didn't have tablets, they didn't have a remote learning plan. They had nothing for our children. Zero. That's the bureaucracy. The state education department offered nothing to our parents, to our teachers, to our administrators, to our students. If not for the teachers on Staten Island and across this state, and the administrators, the principals and the APs, and the parents who stepped up, our children would have lost even more than they lost. What did they lose? So, baseball seasons were canceled. Basketball seasons were canceled. Proms were canceled. Drama clubs were canceled. You can go on and on, lacrosse. And you might think, well, that's all trivial, big deal sports. Well, it isn't if you're a junior in high school or a senior in high school. It's very important in your life. And then look at the education that they missed out on. Every study is now showing that our students in New York, educationally, are behind. Why? Why? Because as the leader said, mandates that didn't work. It would be one thing. We heard they were going to flatten the curve. All they did was flatten our economy and flatten our kids. It would be one thing if you shut down the economy, you closed schools, you fired teachers, you fired healthcare workers, you fired employees, you put restaurants out of business. It would be one thing if you looked after all of that and you said, but we saved lives. Look what good it did. They did all that. And they didn't save a single life. As Leader Ort said, when you look at New York's numbers, after all those mandates, after all those shutdowns, after all those students sent home, we have one of the highest death rates on planet Earth. As Senator Ort said, in terms of the mandates today, you know, I had a laugh. I was actually home. I listened at the beginning of the Omicron variant. The governor and people from the health department mentioned that it had hit New York. Ground zero for Omicron seemed to be some event, a convention in New York City, where everyone was required to be vaccinated to be there. And that was the first sort of super spreader event. I'm not blaming anybody there. You blame Omicron. But that's where it all spread. That seems to be the source in New York. If it wasn't there, it would have been somewhere else. The point is, everyone there was vaccinated. And I remember she read the statistics. I think she said something like there were 87 new cases, or the first cases, we have 87 here in New York. 85 were vaccinated, 2 weren't. So I urge you to get vaccinated. And by the way, I'm considering vaccine mandates for students in September of 2022. I mean, if it were a Saturday Night Live skit, I would think it would be a bit too much. 99% of the people who had Omicron first here in New York were vaccinated, so please go get vaccinated. And by the way, I'm going to have perpetual vaccine mandates for our students going forward. Parents are fed up. Students are fed up. We're fed up. New Yorkers are fed up. Enough is enough. Back home where I live in Staten Island, there's a vaccine mandate in our schools. There are more teachers contracting Omicron now than before the vaccine mandate. I mean, can't we be honest with each other? Look out the window. You know it's happening. Ask yourselves, how many people do you know have had Omicron in the last few weeks. How many were vaccinated? They were. I wish that wasn't the case. It is the case. Luckily, the silver lining, Omicron is not as deadly and not nearly as deadly. In fact, I saw the latest study. It's 100 times less deadly than the other variants. It's, in fact, less deadly than the typical flu we've been dealing with for hundreds of years. The mandates don't work. Worse than that, we've really harmed our children. We've really stolen some of their prime years from them. We've stolen the opportunity to really give them the best education that they should have had and they deserve. Perhaps nowhere more than in our healthcare system, which Senator Helmy is going to speak about, in our schools. If you want to look at how badly this administration has done, and the administration in New York City, both the health department and the education department, if you want to really try to understand the epic fail, look no further than our schools. And it is tragic, and it's got to end. And with that, I'm going to introduce someone who has been a leader from one end of the state to the other, defending and fighting for the best interests of New Yorker, regardless of what they say. She's a leader in our conference, and she's a leader in the state. It's my privilege to introduce Senator Pam Helmy.
Thank you, Senator Lanza, and thank you, Leader Ort. It's great to be here with all of you on this beautiful, crisp day. We've all seen the headlines over the past few months describing the situation that exists inside of our hospitals and our nursing homes. Those headlines have read, crisis, crushed, breaking point, 2 nurses for 36 patients, slammed. And like I said, these are just some of the headlines that are out there. But despite the concerns we continue to hear from hospitals and nursing home administrators, from nurses and staff, and even from our county governments about the crushing impacts of these mandates, the state, what do? They issue yet another mandate requiring healthcare workers to now be boosted. Another mandate that could further impact staffing in our healthcare facilities and jeopardize their ability to safely care for the people of all of our communities. Mandates have put roughly 34,000 people, 34,000 healthcare professionals out of work. Ordered every single hospital in my district, every single one, in 40 hospitals across this entire state to pause elective surgeries. The mandates have forced my constituents, forced all of our constituents to travel hundreds of miles from their home for the care that they need. Yes, the vaccine mandates are just one factor. We all know the staffing crisis existed long before the pandemic. And you know what? It's going to exist long after this pandemic unless we start to take real, meaningful action. Now, what the governor has proposed and what she's done, hiring out-of-state workers, bringing in costly traveling nurse services, and training more National Guard members, that's not the answers for our hospitals and our nursing homes. We need to give our hospitals and our facilities the flexibility they need right now. What we really need to do is we need to get out of their way and let them do the jobs that they're trained to do. I believe there's a lot we can agree to when it comes to supporting and growing our healthcare workforce. We need to come together and get it done. Our healthcare workers are overwhelmed, they're overburdened, and burned out. We need to help them and not crush them with more mandates. So going back to the headlines for a minute, this is the headline that I want to be responsible for crafting and that I know every member of our conference will be involved in making sure happens. A headline that reads, New York State ends mandates. Steps up to support our nurses and our healthcare workers and protects and provides access to timely and quality care for all New Yorkers. That's what this conference stands for. At this point, it is my privilege to introduce my good friend and my colleague, Senator Matera.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Senator Helming. You know, this is a very, very hard topic for me, especially being a union leader. Yes, do we know this pandemic has been something unprecedented for all of us and all of our lives. But guess what? Just like with the Spanish flu back in the early 1900s, what happened? The third wave came. Everybody said we need to continue with our lives. And you know what? Our lives have been shattered. All I really need to say today is, just with the speakers, with Senator Lanza, Senator Ort, just to say ditto. Really, what more can I say? But look what is happening to our lives. You know, mandates, I will never be for mandates. Guess what? Mandates are government control. We don't need to have government tell us how to live our lives for our future. My children right now, my daughters especially, are frightened. They are so frightened that they got to sit there and say, Dad, what am I supposed to do? I want to go to college to another school, and I have to have a mandate that I need to be vaccinated. Dad, I know what I need to do. I know what I have to do to make sure to protect myself. I'm healthy, Dad. This is our future that I have to go with my family to go sit there and say, I don't know what to tell you because there's a mandate. Governor Hochul, stop hiding behind the Commissioner of Health. You're the one that's controlling this. I'm a union leader. A union leader protects jobs, not lose jobs. I won't be a union leader if that was the case. I've always been a voice for the people. I am appalled. This is unacceptable that people are losing their jobs and to hear that foreign workers and out-of-state workers are going to take jobs away from us. It's the backbone. Labor is the backbone of the whole economy and our future for our families. I've been there, going and making sure, bringing food to our healthcare workers to thank them when everything was going, because they were our heroes. They went to zeros, Governor Hochul. They'll always be my hero. Always. I'm sorry I'm shouting, but I'm passionate about things because this is serious. These are people's careers. I went through an apprenticeship program with the union. Very proud when I graduated. These people got their RNs. Tom Downey and his wife, both got their RN degrees. Very excited. Started a family. Okay, bought a house on Long Island. Very difficult. Need two salaries. Tom Downey and Dawn, both are really proud. 3 children. To raise 3 children on Long Island. They have to move to Florida? Governor Hochul, come out here and tell me to my face. These people have to move to Florida. Guess what? Medical exemption. Religious exemption. This man right here put the religious exemption in. What is it? He's not sincere enough. That's what comes back? He put the exemption in. Florida has the exemption. Guess what? They look at it. Guess what? You could go to work. What are we doing? Every day I wake up, I feel like I'm in the Twilight Zone. I said, this cannot be real, what is happening to us. This is wrong. To go and have foreign workers, to go and have out-of-state workers to take our jobs. There's a reason why we're declining numbers. And states like Tennessee, Florida, North Carolina, South Carolina are taking our talent away. We have talented people. Now, how do we know what we're going to get in our hospitals with people that are coming from other countries and other states? Are they qualified? Tom Dowling and his wife and his sister-in-law all lost their jobs. This man right here, right now, is using anything that he has. He has to sell his house. His home is up for sale, Governor Hochul. You could do this right now. I am pleading with you. This is not fair. Thousands, tens of thousands of people right now have to find a new career or move out of state. A career, guess what, Governor Hochul? When you got that law degree, weren't you a proud day? Just like with this man when he got his RN degree. Proud day in his life. Just like it was a proud day for everybody standing here. But what? To be crushed. To be crushed. Seriously. This is something very, very serious as a labor leader. And it's totally unacceptable that these people are losing their jobs, not just our healthcare workers. What about the cleaners? What about the food prep? What about administration? And people are frightened if they speak up. But you know what? This man right here that's going to come up and speak, he's not frightened to speak up. He is here today, came up from Long Island, you know what, last night, because he knows what? He's going to be a voice. I have always been a voice. I will challenge anybody. As a union leader, I'm not frightened. Dealt with a lot of people. And guess what? I will call you out, and then I'll have a cup of coffee with you later on. Because when I'm right, I'll go for the jugular vein. And right now, this is so important that we get these people back to work, and we don't need out-of-state or foreign workers to take our jobs away from New Yorkers. And you know what? When you go, and I go to all these rallies, and you know what? When the healthcare workers are standing there, because right now they go, Senator Matera, what can we do? What can we do? I said, you know what we could do? Get the right people in office that are going to hear our voice. And that's what we're going to do. And you know what? This past election, especially on Long Island and up in New York, it went loud and clear. Guess what? We're sick and tired. We want the right people that are going to take care of us and our families. All right? And that's what needs to be that needs to happen. But right now, Governor Hochul, you can fix this and get these people their jobs back and not sit there and be interrogated. On the paper, it says it's going to be interrogation. That's what it is? Why can't it say an interview? An interrogation? What are we about? This isn't the America that I was brought up with. And you know what? And nobody here, and even Governor Hochul, which I thought it was going to be a little different. Do I see when she has her necklace on, it says vaxxed? I didn't buy that for my wife for Christmas. But all I can just tell you is, I don't know what that means. People are frightened, especially right now, when you're sitting there and you need to get a booster, okay? That's where people don't understand. Oh, okay, I'm so sorry. So in the meantime, I'm sorry, because I could be up there and so passionate. So you know what? I'm going to call Tom Dowling up so he could tell you his story. Thank you so much, everybody.
I want to thank this. Well, hold on. I want to thank this man. First of all, he's been at all our rallies at Stony Brook. He's been a fighter for us. So thank you, Senator Matera. Seriously. How you guys doing? My name's Tom Dowling. I am one of the Stony Brook nurses. Again, as my wife and my sister-in-law, all of us lost our jobs, all because we didn't want to take a vaccine that went against our religious beliefs. It's been completely unfair. I mean, when this whole thing started, I had to have the conversation with my wife to literally, you know, have my family quarantine off on the side, going to work, figuring this is what God wants me to do. I will continue to do, not knowing if I was ever even going to see my family again. You know, for 2 months I endured that, you know, being a father through a glass window, you know, to see my kids. Couldn't hug them, couldn't kiss them, nothing. And, you know, this happened for 2 years in a row. And my thanks for it is, hey, you're not going to get the vaccine. I know it's your body, you're right, but we're going to coerce you. You know, last I heard, like, coercion is illegal. They held my job and so many other healthcare workers' jobs over our head for taking a vaccine against our will. I mean, this is just unacceptable. Like, how anybody can even put up with this is beyond me. You know, as of right now, like, we are at a point where me and my wife, we've been out of work. We have 3 little kids. You know, we literally just bought our house in May and put a lot of money into it. And then this came up. Now we're at a point where we literally have to leave. I am being forced to leave New York, as well as a lot of other healthcare workers. And why? Over, you know, 30% of Stony Brook's fully vaccinated staff were out sick with COVID, putting all your lives in danger. Think about that. 650,000 deaths a year just from heart attacks. We did not close McDonald's. We didn't close Burger King or any of that. You know, but I can't go to work. I'm sitting here ready, willing, and able to work, and I cannot work. Think about that, guys. All right? You know, this is just unacceptable. everybody out there, he's right. We got to get the right people in there. All our elected officials here, thank God they're here. Lee Zeldin, he's my man. I want him in. But, right now, she is in the spot. It is her decision. This is on her. So if you have a family member that gets injured, because there's lack of staffing, that's on her. All that blood is on her. All right? Not because I decided not to get a vaccine because it went against my beliefs. This is my body, my right. This is America. What the hell? So, I don't know what else to say, guys. If she cannot fix this, then we need to get somebody in there that can fix this. And if they don't fix this, we'll get that one out, and this is enough. At that point, if it doesn't get fixed, I ask all my fellow citizens, do not comply. Enough with the masks that don't work. Enough with these vaccines that are not working. What else do you want? Enough. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tom. I want to thank my colleagues, Senator Matera, Senator Lanza, Senator Helming, who had to get to another meeting. We have several of our colleagues who couldn't be here today. They were at the Health Committee meeting this morning, where we're asking questions of the acting Department of Health Commissioner. There's going to be a Finance Committee happening, I think, currently, potentially, or very shortly, to also ask the acting Health Commissioner further questions. And then that confirmation will be, we expect, at some point this week. So our conference is doing our job on that front, but we obviously are here to, again, the takeaway needs to be we need to move to guidance. That is why you have a health department. They can put out guidance. New Yorkers are smart enough to make the decisions that are right for their families, just as Floridians are, just as people in Tennessee are, just as people in other states are and have been. We trust New Yorkers. If you're issuing mandates, that means you don't trust New Yorkers. That's the only reason you'd be mandating something. We trust them to make the right decision, especially at this point in the pandemic. We need to be contributing to solutions, not making the problems worse. And that's what this conference is here today to talk about. I'll take questions on topic first. I'm sure there may be some off-topic questions. So on-topic questions first, and then we'll move to off-topic. So, yes, I do have concerns. For a long time, Nick, we discussed this yesterday. We always want to be fair-minded as elected leaders. When you have confirmation, you want to look at a resume, credentials. But the truth is, as someone mentioned yesterday, Dr. Zucker had a pretty good resume. He had pretty good credentials. And he was an unmitigated disaster. And he misled the legislature and the people of New York. And he did so on behalf of his master, former Governor Cuomo. So you have to also look at actions. You have to look at policies. She's the acting commissioner. So we already have a little bit of a preview of what she has been doing and what she is going to look to continue to do. And I think that's given our conference pause on her confirmation. And I think you're going to see that in the questions, both in the Health Committee and in the Finance Committee today. And then we'll see, I'm sure there'll be robust discussion on the floor. For the workers, for healthcare workers, yeah. So, look, I think at this point, these are folks who they're taking care of our loved ones in a hospital. I think the state would have an obligation, but I also think that that could be shared. The hospital could fund some of that, but I think there needs to be a third option. 34,000 workers are gone. They're out of a job. We had a health staffing crisis before the pandemic. So I just don't know how we can be sincere about when we talk about a bed shortage. Make no mistake, it's not a bed shortage. It is a staffing shortage. There's plenty of beds. We don't have the people to staff the bed. That's the issue. And so whatever that answer is, we can have that dialogue, and obviously there's going to be public dollars that have to pay for those tests. But I think the public would be fine with that if they knew there'd be more healthcare workers to take care of us in the hospital, not just for COVID. People still go to the hospital, shockingly, for other things as well. They still go for heart attacks. They still go for other illnesses. They still go for cancer treatments. They still go for dialysis. They still go for other things. And we need to be, we are in the wrong position in New York State. We are not in a position to shed 34,000 jobs in the healthcare workforce to other states. We do a good job of losing jobs to other states all on our own without doing these kinds of things. This is the wrong, it's just not working. The data does not back it up, and that's why I think we're looking for a test-out option or some other option to keep these folks employed and doing the thing that they love to do, that they want to do. You don't become a nurse to get rich. You're being a nurse because you care about helping people.
Any other questions?
That's on topic. Any off topic? Off topic. Sure, sure. Spoiler alert, we're going to be against it wholeheartedly. And I say that, you know, and I appreciate you. Obviously, we were very outspoken about it last year. And then we find out, so we were against it because it's just fundamentally wrong. I just can't stress that enough on behalf of our conference. Fundamentally wrong. That we're going to lay aside $2.1 billion for unemployment benefits to those who are here, non-U.S. citizens. And we laid out a couple $1 million for veterans, Dwyer post-traumatic stress services. So American New Yorkers, citizens who defended and fought for this country, were worth $4 million, and non-U.S. citizens were worth $2.1 billion. Show me your budget, and I'll show you your priorities. That was their priority. We were against it. Then we find out, though, not shockingly, that there's all this fraud. There's fraud. Who would imagine there'd be fraud in a program, $2.1 billion to those who are not U.S. citizens? And there was. And their response was, well, we got to put more money into it. And so, you know, my colleagues, they're going to continue to push for that program. Our conference will continue to oppose that program. Look, the truth is, if we can get people back to, that was a pandemic-related program. I would argue we are on the other side of this pandemic. So just on that justification alone, we shouldn't do it. Because we should be moving past where people are unemployed. There's plenty of jobs out there for people to go to work. There's plenty, in fact, there's not enough workers for the jobs. So the argument that somebody needs more unemployment benefits, on its face, I find objection to, but especially non-U.S. citizens, maybe some of that money can go to New Yorkers, U.S. citizens who desperately need it in several other aspects of state government. That's where I would like, and I think our conference would like to see that money go to. Certainly no more programs like that. Sure. Sure. And you're talking just New Yorkers in general on that front, right? For undocumented. Yeah, I think it's great work if you can get it, right? You know what I mean? I think it goes to show you that really it wasn't about the pandemic. All these things, the driver's licenses, the unemployment benefits, voting rights in New York City, I have said all along, and I think this is very important to understand, all these things are really about conveying de facto citizenship to people who are not citizens. New York State, of course, like every state, we don't confer citizenship. That's a federal thing. But this is a backdoor way to confer. We'll give them voting rights, you'll get unemployment benefits, you'll get identification, you'll get everything without being a citizen, because we can't do that. But we're going to give you everything else, de facto citizenship. And it waters down, and it's an insult to citizens of this country. In fact, it's the greatest insult to people who came over from other countries and stood in line and waited for years and took the test and went to the classes. It's a real slap in the face to them. And it makes me upset, and they should be upset when they see that. It's completely wrong. I would rather them just say it is what it is. Don't use the pandemic. Don't use some, Trump or the Republicans or the weather or anything else. Just say what you're really doing, which is you want to convey citizenship for people who aren't citizens, which is not a function of New York State government anyways, and I think it's wrong, and I think most New Yorkers would tell you it's wrong.
For Senator Lanza, from a code's perspective, what do you think of the budget?
From a what perspective?
From a code's perspective, what do you think about the budget's potential impacts in this coming year?
Well, I think the leaders pointed out that we've known what their priorities are at the other side of the aisle. And, you know, Governor Hochul is just more of the same. There's no emphasis in terms of public safety. There's no prioritizing getting our students back into the classrooms. In fact, what we see in that budget and from the policies of this administration is the people who have the most power and keep grabbing more power over the lives of our students and our citizens want yet even more power. And they're the last people, in my estimation, our estimation, who really should have that power, because they've really yielded in a way that has hurt this state. So there are more giveaway programs. The cost of living in New York State, if you look at that budget, is going up. People keep asking what they're getting for that money. I think if you're a New Yorker, it's a fair question to ask. You know, I pay more than anyone else around the country, and I look around, I don't seem to be getting as much as people around the country are getting. So sadly, Governor Hochul is doubling down on policies that are driving New Yorkers away from this state.
Also for Senator Oberacher, the expansion we talked about before of broadband in rural areas, as far as infrastructure investments go, do you think it's sufficient as far as what you have seen preliminarily in the budget?
Hope springs eternal. You know, the fact that it has been at least addressed and there has been some effort put forward and some money allocated for it, absolutely. Now we got to get serious about it and make it happen, right? That last mile that we all talk about, that last mile connect needs to happen. So, you know, I'm encouraged. I'm willing to kind of see what it takes to get us to that last mile, but we got to make that happen.
Last question? A two-parter. It's always the last question that's the hardest.
The first is on bail reform.
Sure.
The governor approved about, I think, $10 million for pretrial services outside of New York City. What was your reading of that, and how much money should put that restore the budget?
Sure.
And then the second question is on
For the farmers? Okay. So, with regard to the public safety and the budget and the pretrial services, but also there was $224 million for to address gun violence, or $224 million is a lot of dollars. I guess, you know, when I look at the public safety portion of the budget, so nothing about bail, changing bail back, getting rid of cashless bail, nothing about prosecuting people that use illegal firearms, or changing which crimes are bail eligible versus not. We have ID cards for prisoners, which I don't know if the COs don't know who they are, or I don't know why they would need ID cards in jail, but we're going to do free IDs, non-driver IDs for those in prison. That was under the public safety portion. Then there was $224 million to address gun violence. I'd really like to see what that entails. I mean, that's a lot of money. How are you addressing that gun violence? Is that some massive gun buyback program? What is the plan there? You know, the money for the pretrial. I mean, again, all of this stuff, all of this money, I feel like she's sort of moving around the edges without addressing the real meat of what's going on. And the funny part is that doesn't even cost any money. You just got to change the law to make it actually so that police officers and DAs and judges can keep people who are committing crimes in jail if they feel that that's important. So that's the public safety portion of the budget raises just as many questions as I think it answers, or more. The tax credit. We had a press conference back home last week, and what I heard from farmers who were there, they said that the issue with the tax credit is this, without knowing the full details yet, is that the tax credit they'll be able to take it next year, but they'll have to pay the overtime this year. So it's a cash flow issue for a lot of our farms, right? Even if it is a 1-for-1, or even if it does offset the increase, it won't offset the increase when they have to pay it. And for a lot of farms, the reality is a lot of small farms in New York, it is just they are living week to week, season to season, and the issue would be, well, if the credit, I get the credit next year, can I get to next year with a 40-hour work week, overtime threshold, if that's what comes down. I do want to also mention, we all noticed the reporters who came out in the cold and the ones who didn't. So I want to thank you guys for coming out. All right? So.